stand. They do a terrific job, and they spent some time crafting the questions for today's event during the planning. To moderate today's forum, please help me welcome to the stand the Executive Editor of the Spectrum newspaper, Steve Higgins, or otherwise affectionately known as Scoop Skiggy on Twitter.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to be here with you today. Before we go over the ground rules, certainly want to thank President Williams and everybody here at Dixie State for their hospitality today. We're going to go ahead and start with the St. George Council and Mayoral candidates. So if they could join me here on the stage, we'll get ready to go. Following the St. George, we will move on to the Washington City Council and Mayoral candidates. As far as the script for today, City Council candidates will respond in alphabetical order before mayoral candidates, with the order of those going first changing as directed by the moderator. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement about why they are the best candidate. We will then begin asking questions, requesting a 1-minute response from each candidate. 1 additional minute may be granted to each candidate for rebuttal if they are mentioned by name in another candidate's answer. Candidates have not been given the prepared questions in advance. The large time clock. Where's the large time? It's right there, Steve, right there. It's so large I missed it. It's right there. David Cordero will be in charge of that time, so we know we're in good hands there. The clock will be reset each time a candidate begins his answer or rebuttal, and will chime when the time is up. A candidate need not take the entire time to answer a question or may decline a question at any time. After all candidates have responded to the questions, each will be given a final minute to summarize. Today's program is scheduled to go until 1:30. If you are not able to stay for the entire time, we just ask that you would please exit quietly in the back. And again, we're going to start with St. George and then move on to Washington City. All right, so for our St. George City Council candidates and mayoral candidates, we're going to go through our introductions first. We will start there at the far end with Mr. Aldred and actually, the order's a little bit different. Oh, okay, you guys make me think. We're going to go Mr. Aldred first, followed by Mr. Bowcut, Mr. MacArthur, and then to our mayoral candidates. And also want to mention, too, Michelle Randall is not able to be here today. She was ill and not able to join us for today's forum. Otherwise, she certainly would have been here. So with that, I'll stop talking. Mr. Aldred, 2 minutes.
Well, I guess I'll use there we go. I was going to use my outside voice. Hello, I'm Greg Aldred, married to Carol. Carol, are you back there? And, you know, together we've raised 5 daughters in this beautiful city and county. And as I've said before, that either makes me a good listener or I've been manipulated by women all my life. So I think it's the first one. I've left a little handout on your table, so a lot of it is me, and naturally you have to do that. But I've chaired many different boards. I've been fortunate to serve this community in many capacities. I have been a past Chamber of Commerce president and another to the east. But right now I'm the past chair for the Dixie Sunshiners. Any Sunshiners here? Ooh-wee. Yeah, all right, Sunshiners. With that said, we are the ambassadors for our St. George Chamber. And that's what this is about, empowering small business. You guys, as I said, it's like talking to family here, because without you, we don't exist. And so we need to do everything we can to empower you as small business people. And I feel that I'd be good on the city council in doing that. We're regulated in so many different ways, and our duty as government is priority is public safety. And so with that said, I understand that there's many challenges ahead for this fine city. And the different positions and the capacity that I've held there, I think empowers me to forge ahead. My wife liked that word forge, and I do too. So there's some tough decisions to be made. I'm here for you. Please, it's going to be all about November 7th. Put it in your device and show up to vote. I'm asking for that vote. Greg Aldred, thank you.
Before Mr. Bocut takes his 2 minutes, if I could ask that we would just keep the applause until the end, that would be great. It might save us a couple of minutes. Please, Mr. Bocut, I apologize.
I thought that was going to be the only applause I got, and now you've stopped it. I'm very happy to be here with you today. I brought my beautiful wife with me. She's my first wife, actually my only wife, 51 years now. We've had the blessing of raising 5 children here in the area. 3 of my sons are all retired military, full-time military. My 2 daughters have been very successful in their careers. My one daughter's a school teacher. My other daughter is a office manager for a trucking company. This has been a great place to live. We've been here 42 years. 12,000 people lived here when we moved here. 2 stoplights. It's changed a wee bit. But the great part is wonderful people have moved here. And I could never imagine what it would be like if we hadn't kept the borders open and kept people coming in here. We're always going to have some growth. Great people want to live here. I've noticed that nobody's going across the border to go into Mexico, but they're trying to get into the United States, and that may be because they know what we have here. They know how we're blessed here. I have the opportunity of serving for the past 4 years, almost 4 years on the city council, so I do have some lead on what's coming up, what's going to happen, and I think I'd like to see some of those things continue. We have some great things coming down the pike. That's good. Coming down the pike in the city, and so I would encourage all of you to participate and vote. I was very embarrassed about 11% vote at the primary. I hope we can get a lot higher when the time comes on November 7th. I would encourage you all to vote at that time.
Mr. MacArthur.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Greg MacArthur. I just want to take a couple minutes to just tell you why I feel like I'm qualified to be a candidate for St. George City Council. So I've been getting a lot of questions lately. I'm surprised I'm getting this question. People come up to me and say, why are you running for St. George City Council? Are you ready for that kind of abuse? And the answer is twofold. Number one, I have a passion for this community. I absolutely love it. And number two is because I feel like I'm qualified to serve in this capacity. I can represent you well as a city council member. Just to tell you a little bit about me, we'll go through my history really quick. So born and raised in St. George, went to East Elementary, Dixie Middle School, Dixie High School, Dixie College at the time, now Dixie State University. Then went to Brigham Young University. And then I got my MBA from Southern Utah University, so educated here in Southern Utah. My first job was at Merrill Lynch. I didn't have the opportunity to come back to St. George because there wasn't a job for me. I graduated in finance and marketing, and I just couldn't get the job. So I moved with Merrill Lynch, I moved to Portland, Oregon. Served there for 3 years, managed $2 billion. It was a great career, but you know what? Portland is not St. George. So I moved closer to St. George. I moved to Las Vegas, and I became the marketing manager of the Venetian and Palazzo hotels. It was the largest hotel in the world, and I got to market it. It was a blast, but you know what? Las Vegas is not St. George. So I finally got the opportunity to come home, and I love it here. I served as the president of the St. George Area Chamber of Commerce for 6 years. During that time, I got to know the business community very well. I got to know economic development very well. I got to know and serve along with the leaders of Dixie College, the Dixie Applied Technology College. I said Dixie College, Dixie State University, sorry, President. And also the Washington County School District. I served on the the Washington County Water Conservancy Board, not the board, but the Water Conservation Panel. And I served with the Washington County Tourism Board. I was the director. And so I know St. George very well. A lot of people ask, what have you done since you've left the chamber? I've moved into commercial real estate. Right now, I'm in the middle of a few developments. I know zoning. I know ordinances. I know about impact fees. And I feel like I can represent you well. I ask for your vote on November 7th. St. Greg MacArthur.
We will now hear from our two mayoral candidates, starting with Mr. Pike, followed by Mr. Rono.
Well, good afternoon. I might have to use my big boy, or outdoor voice. There we go. It's a pleasure to be with you. I just can't imagine a better place to be right now, today, than St. George, Utah. I am happy to have been your mayor for the last 4 years here in the city of St. George. It's hard to believe it's gone that fast. Frankly, we've been very busy. I think you can tell as you look around the community. 4 years ago, I made 3 key commitments, and I've done my very best, and I believe I've kept those commitments, that I would listen to citizens and their concerns and work hard to resolve issues. 2, that we would be planning more than we ever have in the past, and that we would develop a 5-year plan. And 3rd, that we would focus on economic development and education. As you look around the city right now and you see our partner right here, President Biff Williams, what an incredible leader he is. But again, I view myself and our city council, as a whole, the city, as partners with education, with the school district, with the university, with Dixie Tech, about to open officially up on the hill. That is critical to our future economically, and I know you are concerned about that. When you look around at this campus and see what's happened and what's happening, next week they'll break ground on their next building, their human performance building. So incredible things have happened. Our plan, going backwards, our 5-year strategic plan was made available several years ago. It's online. You can see it. You'll see all the elements of that. Every year we do an annual State of the City where we report on the progress of the plan. And in listening, we've adjusted meeting times to make it more available, and every email possible. I try to answer everyone, every phone call, everything we can do to make this a collaborative process. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rono.
Hello. Can you hear me out there? My name's Lane Rono. I'm a candidate for mayor of the great city of St. George. When I filed, I went to church the next Sunday, and a member there asked me, I do a TV interview show, and he said, you ought to interview yourself on your show. And I said, how would I do that? And I thought about it, and I thought, I'll have my wife interview me. So I asked her, I said, Paula, I'd like you to interview me on my show. She said, you don't want me to interview you. And I said, why not? She said, the first question will be, what got into your mind? This is what got into my mind. 13 years ago, we bought a house here. I was born in Cedar City, but ran away from southern Utah for a while. Northern Utah, California, that foreign country to the west of Nevada, Arizona, Canada. But we finally got back here. And as I've been here, I've had an opportunity to interview a lot of people on my show. A story to tell. And I've found out a lot of things that are going on in St. George that I don't like. In the management. Now we can talk about the growth and the pipeline and everything that's wonderful. But we forget about sometimes that there's a management factor that goes on here that's not done very well. My rap sheet is out on the table. I left some on your tables, and I've given most of you one. If you want to know what I'm really concerned about, read that rap sheet. Give me a call. Lane Rono, candidate for mayor. Thank you.
All right, let's answer some questions. We have 3 prepared questions, so we're going to start with Mr. Bocut. First question, if you are elected, what will be your priorities for city budget and why?
Takes a minute. There we go. First of all, 63% of our general budget is spent on what I call the quality of life that we enjoy here in St. George. We have public safety, leisure services, and public works. That's 63% of our budget. That's what makes it a great place to live. Do we have enough money? No. Never will we have enough money, but we have to allocate it to the best of our ability. We've had a lot of experience doing that. We've stayed within our budget always, especially over the last 4 years. So I think those things that make this a great place to live are the things that we have to continue to spend our money on and continue to make this a great place to live.
Mr. MacArthur, 1 minute.
So, when we start talking about budgets, I just want to first say that I am fiscally conservative. So I think that we need to make do with what we have. I'm not for raising taxes, and I'm not for bringing things up unless there's definitely a need for it. I want to echo that I do want to make sure that we continue to provide funding to things that make St. George such a great place to work, live, and play. That's what makes St. George so unique. And so I want to make sure that we look at those things. As I mentioned earlier, I worked for Merrill Lynch for quite a few years. I absolutely love finance. That's what my degree is in. So I'm very qualified to look at the budgets, make sure we make qualified and educated decisions on those things. And I'm excited to jump in and get involved in it.
Mr. Aldred.
I want to compliment Greg on finishing early. Well done. The duty of government is public safety first to me, and that is our duty to you. So within our budget, we need to find a little better way to recruit law enforcement here and for our emergency services. That's a priority to me. Also, the infrastructure, we saw Proposition 1 last time on the ballot about increasing taxes because we're driving better economical vehicles, and sometimes I just kind of have to chuckle at that. That's kind of our government, and we do spend everything that they get. So I would like to see a better program on infrastructure and looking at the dollars in the budget of making that happening and making sure that we have the emergency services provided to you as citizens. Thank you.
To our mayoral candidates, we'll start with Mr. Rano, please.
I thought I heard someone say a minute ago that there's never enough money. There's never enough money if you're going to waste it. The last consulting job I had, they were overspending their budget by $750,000 a year. They were $1,500,000 in debt, on and on and on. When I left, they had $5 million cash in the bank, and that was a not-for-profit corporation. That's fiscal management. That's what we need here. Someone to look at what's going on, find out what's going on, and solve the problems. There's always enough money if you know how to manage it.
Mr. Pike.
So the city of St. George is fiscally sound. You need to know that. It is very well managed. We have surpluses in our fund balance, in our energy services department, in our water, wastewater, and water collection departments. And there's an extent to which you can't go beyond a certain percentage of your annual budget. We are just below that, but we are very soundly managed. I want to say that. My top priority is public safety right now. It's difficult, as you may notice, sometimes on the national scene and even locally, to recruit police officers. So we have actually, just in the last week, we have developed a plan for recruiting additional already certified police officers. All that we have, all the beauty that we have, the quality of life that we have, means nothing if we're not safe. So that will be my first priority in the next year. Thank you.
We will move to question number 2. Other than the budget issues which we just addressed, what are your biggest concerns for the city and why? We will start with Mr. MacArthur.
I'm going to see if I can start a trend here. I'm going to sit for this one and see what happens. So, so my concerns, I think the biggest concerns for the city of St. George is growth, is the growth that's happening here. As we plan for the future, as we look at new developments that are coming in, now that I'm in the development side of things, you know, everybody's out there to make a buck, and there's a lot of things that people want to do. I want to make sure that we preserve the city. I want to make sure that as we make decisions, as we develop moving forward, that we make the right decisions. I want to make sure that we have affordable housing. That's something that I'm I think is very important for us, and I think that we're lacking in. We're building a lot of new multifamily housing, but that's not necessarily affordable housing. I also want to make sure that we make the right decisions around town, as where new buildings go and things like that. I want to make sure that we preserve this great place that we have. And so that's my concerns.
Mr. Aldred, 1 minute.
I'm going to stand because my hammies are tight. I've been playing in the senior games. Yes, we got gold in pickleball yesterday. Pretty stoked about that, yeah. Okay, affordable housing, I'm glad Greg brought that up. We're not talking low-income housing. We're talking about affordable housing because we've got a labor shortage. And we're seeing in many of our industries, especially in the construction, we've had people head to Texas. My son-in-law called me, and I actually went over and framed his house because his framers up and left him. So that's what we do as business owners. We step in and take care of that. So with that addressed is we have to have that labor force in a route to live here, or we're going to lose them. So that's a big concern of mine. Thank you.
Mr. Bocut.
Maybe nobody wants to bring up water, but it is a crucial situation that we're facing here. Keep in mind, all of the water that we have in St. George comes from one drainage. That's the Virgin River drainage. It doesn't come from anywhere else. If that ever dries up, we're in deep trouble. Will it? Probably not. It's going to rain again sometime, and it's going to snow again sometime up in the mountains. But I think we need to look very closely at the pipeline. I'm not sure how we could afford that. I don't think it can happen without support from the state and the federal government. But I think it's a necessary evil that we're going to have to maintain the lifestyle that we want to have. One other thing is traffic. We will never have good traffic. I hate to tell you that. But we've got geographical boundaries that restrict traffic. 2 Black Ridges, the river, the habitat. We're always going to have a little challenge with traffic. We'll keep working on that.
To our mayoral candidates, 1 minute each, starting with Mr. Pike.
My biggest areas of focus over the next couple of years will be actually 2 things, and somewhat mentioned already. First will be jobs and increasing wages. This will be accomplished largely, not entirely, but largely through our focus on Tech Ridge. And you'll be hearing more about that very shortly. We have we've done our due diligence, our planning, our analysis with consultants, and we are ready very soon to hopefully make a decision on who will be our partner in developing the first 30 acres. That will be critical. It will actually help the tech industry to create a critical mass, if you will, of employees that will help to attract others here and grow organically from within. Second thing is affordable workforce housing. We have approximately 700 units coming online in the next year and a half that will make a significant difference. Thank you.
Mr. Rano.
I get calls every day about the problems in the city, the management of the city, not the grandiose plans, and I hope they all come through. But I think one of the big problems is code enforcement. Every day, someone confronts me about code enforcement in the city. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about housing, not enough housing, low-cost, medium housing. I'm concerned about the water problem, but I think it's too early to take sides on the Lake Powell pipeline. Maybe I'm getting ahead of what the questions will be. But we need to evaluate, understand, and efficiently and transparently do the operation of the St. George City government. Thank you.
Our third question, we will start with the mayoral candidates, just to prove we can have a little fun. Mr. Pike first, followed by Mr. Rono. The question, with the defeat of Proposition 1 last year, how will you propose we fund roads and transportation going forward, and how critical is this need?
Proposition 1 was the proposed increase in sales tax, 0.25%. It was to go to 10% to transit locally, if you have a transit system, and 15% to roads. That was defeated. It actually passed in St. George by a couple percent, but it had to pass in the whole county, or it failed. So it failed. What that is to me, and that's fine, that was a source of revenue made available to us by the state legislature. Because it failed, we'll have to do the best with what we have. What that means is our growth of transit will be slower. We don't have the funds to grow Suntran at this point. But that said, we look for the lowest cost options we can to improve our roads, and we are working even as of Monday with the state legislature to see what kind of help they can provide us in terms of our transit. And so we'll see how that happens going forward. I suspect you'll see something in the current legislative session or the future legislative session in January.
Thank you, Mr. Rano.
I think when I made a criticism of the operation a few minutes ago, John said that they had all these reserves and all these funds. Let's use some of those instead of raise taxes. Now, I'm not against taxes when they're needed, but the people of Washington County spoke about that tax. They didn't want it. We need to listen to the people. Everything we do needs to be people-oriented, and secondarily, friendly-oriented, and thirdly, business-oriented. We need to solve problems with fiscal management, not just throwing money at things to solve problems. That's what I do best. Let me in there. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Mr. Pike, you were mentioned by name. You do have a 1-minute rebuttal.
Thank you. I will. First of all, you do not, this is a fundamental principle, you do not want to fund ongoing operations with one-time dollars. That's what reserve funds are. It's a savings account. So that would be very imprudent to do. You've got to make sure you have an ongoing revenue stream to be able to do that. So, and again, I think the perfect way to measure something such as a transportation tax was to put it before the voters. As the city council and the mayor, we have no authority to raise your taxes except property taxes. And that hasn't happened since 1996. So we don't have a proposal to do that. This was something to put before the voters, which we did, thanks to the legislature and to the county commissioners for putting it on the ballot. And so we consider that done. But there are people we need to listen to who asked for additional transit services. So we will need to address those.
To our city council candidates, we will start with Mr. Aldred.
Okay, thank you. In the 80s, I worked with my father's engineering company and road business, and we built a lot of the roads here. So I feel that I bring an expertise in infrastructure. I appreciate what the city's doing, looking into overlays or slurry sills or chip and seal and et cetera, ways to keep our roads maintained, also with our infrastructure. I wasn't a big fan of Proposition 1. I'd like to address this more intensely with our impact fees that we pay and some of the things on growth that are supposed to sustain our roads and the plan for that. I think it's crucial to have our local contractors qualify to be able to do this work and privatize it because it helps with that big economic circle. If our local people are doing the resurfacing and we're privatizing it, they will help put back money into our economy. So I hope you'll recognize my expertise there. Thank you.
1 minute, Mr. Bocut.
I probably won't take 1 minute. This is going to start working in a second. How many of you know where Tremont, Utah is? It's 370 miles from here. That's how many miles of paved roads we have in St. George, Utah. Continually, we need to find money to keep those going and to update them and keep them good. Now, the price continues to go up. If another source of funding can come in, I know the tax didn't pass, but maybe some help from the state will be the way that we have to do that. That's a lot of miles of road. It's got to be upheld. Prices go up every day. So we hope we can find another source for that.
And Mr. MacArthur.
So my attempt to start a sitting trend failed miserably, so get up. I'm just kidding. So on Proposition 1, that was a very difficult decision for me. At the time, I was with the Chamber, and I looked into it very heavily. And I kept coming back to, being fiscally conservative. I kept coming back to, there were some things about that were, it'd be nice to have, but weren't really mandatory. And so I was like, well, maybe this isn't, I just had some questions on it. But I want to say that I am for preserving and for updating the infrastructure of our roads here. When there's a need for it, I'm definitely in support of it. Those are my thoughts on that.
All right, we will move to a 1-minute closing statement for each candidate. We'll start with the city council candidates and Mr. Aldred.
Well, I can't do it on my own. I need you. And so Friday on the 27th, it's my wife back there, we're going to do Celebrating America, a little music night and stuff. So you're very welcome to find out information. So those things that we didn't address here, we can do maybe more on a personal level. I am, again, hoping and knowing that with your help we can do this. It's going to be such a tight race. So take your device and punch in November 7th and tell your friends. And if you believe that I can bring certain expertise and also value to this city that I love and have a passion for, then please consider me and vote for me. I'm asking for that. And then I just want to mention my mother, because she's so wonderful. They did name the senior center after her. Her hard work here, she's instilled that in me to serve this community. So thank you for hosting us. I appreciate that.
Mr. Bocut.
About 4 years ago, I was elected to the city council. There is a tremendous learning curve, I'll guarantee that. I think that because of that learning curve, having gone through that already, that makes me more qualified to be of assistance to getting done the things that we need done in our city. I would appreciate your vote, but more importantly, I would appreciate anybody voting. We need to get the people out to vote. Spread the word among your friends. Let's make sure we don't come up with another 11% primary. Thank you.
Mr. MacArthur, 1 minute.
So first and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out to Chamber today. Thanks for coming out and getting involved and getting to know us all. You've got a very difficult decision ahead of you. There's a lot of really qualified candidates. In fact, I wish Michelle was here with us today. I was speaking with her last night. She's sick, and she's amazing as well. I just wanted to put in a good plug for her. You should get to know each one of us. I know that you can't get to know people here as good as you probably should just by 1-minute answers on things. So please, if you want to get to know me a little bit better, go to my website. It's gregmacarthur.com, and you'll have my contact information on there. Please feel free to call me, email me, and read up on me there, and everybody else up here. And make sure you get out to vote. That's the most important thing. 11% was very low, but let your voice be heard. If you'd like someone that's approachable, friendly, and really knows the community well, just getting started in the political career and wants to be there and involved in it for quite a long time, well, I ask for your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
To our mayoral candidates, starting with Mr. Pike.
Again, thank you. Thank you for having us here. I also want to thank my wife, Christy, for being here. And she is a great help to me, great sounding board at all times. One of the things that we enjoy doing, I don't know, I enjoy it, I don't know how much she enjoys it, but typically on Friday nights, sometimes Saturday nights after our date nights, it's an occupational hazard. We drive around the city and we check on all the projects. Right now we check on all the political signs, but we usually are checking on all the projects, and there is so much going on. And some of this is playing catch up. Commercial follows residential. We look at the things going on at the university and at Tech Ridge, and we look at the new student housing that opened a year ago, the new one that just started to open here, the first couple floors a few weeks ago. So much going on. And mostly, I guess as I look at that, I think it's all according to the plan. So if you'd like to stick with the plan, again, learn more, go to my website, ilikepike.org. Learn more about it, and please, I ask for your vote either early or on November 7th. Thank you.
And 1 minute, Mr. Rano.
First, I'd like to thank my wife for not interviewing me on my show. I'd like to thank you for being here, and I'd like to thank you for giving us a close look I think I gave out information to most of you. If you didn't get some, you can go to my website at lanerano.com, find the information there. There are some serious problems in the management of St. George City. We need to solve those. Give me a call if you'd like to know more about it, but my number is 435-272-3660. It's on my sheet. Go to my website at lanerano.com. Again, thank you very much for being interested citizens, business people, and friends here in St. George.
Thank you to all of the Yes, please. I know we've been holding our hands. Please. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We appreciate it. All right, we are ready to get started with our candidates for Washington City Council and for mayor. Our format will follow the same as what we just concluded with St. George. A 2-minute introduction, and then 1 minute for each question and a 1-minute closing. We will start with our Washington City Council candidates. 2 minutes. We have 4 council candidates here. We have 3 council candidates here. Well, that's not fair. That's not what the page says. All right. Well, we will go with our 3 council candidates and our mayoral candidates. So please, we'll start right down at the end. Mr. Ward, correct?
So I spoke to Dan Clough. He said I could have his time. I think you got that memo, right? This is the part where I talk about myself. It's a little uncomfortable for me, but my name is Doug Ward. I am running virtually purely out of a sense of duty. I saw things in my neighborhood that I thought would be difficult and harmful for people, and I saw a lack of representation that I thought that I could fix. I am very passionate about representation, and as I've talked to people in a political spectrum, I think we need to work on changing that definition. That has gotten away from us, and that needs to come back to a representation of people that voted for us and standing up for the values. I'm very passionate about community. I believe that one of the best things that we could do to keep our community safe is to preserve the community feel that we have within those communities. My neighborhood is safer because I know my neighbors. My neighborhood is safer because we send our children to play together and to work together. If we can preserve that, we can save money in other things that are much more harsh to preserve community. My experience goes down through, I was smart enough or brave enough at one point to buy into my own business. I was smart enough to recognize that there was a better place to go and take another opportunity. But I think that there needs to be some leadership that understands where problems begin and that we're not picking on the people that work for us if we are pushing them to do better. I think that we need to, and I represent the skills. There is, when I talk to people, I have a natural tendency to hear past their words and to hear the agendas that they might have. And that's okay, but we need to understand where people are coming from and where they're leading us to. And we need to utilize planning so that there is a plan for our community. We have a lot to lose. Let's hold on to it. Thank you.
Moving 2 minutes for Mr. Nissen, please. Nissen, I'm sorry, Mr. Nissen.
Testing. I'm Garth Nyson, and I want to be represent Washington City, and I appreciate being to come here and speak to all you fine people. But I'm a lifetime resident, and I've seen many challenges and struggles the city has faced over the years. I have almost 4 years of experience as councilman, and have learned much about the workings and process of city government. I am truly independent and very fiscally conservative. I have no conflicts of interest and belong to no special interest groups and have received no donations from any group or person. I strongly don't believe in grandstanding or being an obstructionist on serious issues facing our city. I have taken very few office perks and believe the money is better spent in the general fund. I have a long-term perspective on the challenges of growth in Washington City. My previous long-term business experience has given me the ability to understand the complicated workings of the city. I use common sense and have the ability to compromise when needed to solve problems. I try my utmost to be honest and transparent. My pledge is to be reasonable, realistic, respectful, resourceful, resilient, and rights-oriented. I thank and appreciate my supporters, and I hope I can serve another 4 years for a continuation of a great Washington City.
2 minutes, Mr. Ivy.
My name is Kurt Ivy. I was born and raised, and I've lived in Washington and St. George my entire life. I graduated from Dixie High School in '78, served a mission to Scotland and Ireland. I graduated from Dixie High, Dixie College, Southern Utah State, and Utah State University. I've taught at Washington Elementary for the past 30 years and coached Dixie High School baseball for 29. I have been a licensed contractor since '92, and I've owned my own business since '91. My greatest honor was when I received the Veterans of Foreign Wars National Teacher of the Year Award. City Council has the charge to represent their service delivery and quality of life issues of the residents in their city. Council members are obligated to learn their duties, conduct themselves professionally, and engage fully in their position. City Council's first responsibility is to the citizens they represent, then to fulfill legislative responsibilities and conduct oversight over their city. John F. Kennedy said, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that our highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. And the most important question you can ask anyone running for elected office is, why are they running? My motivation is that I love Washington. I want to sustain it for future generations to love and enjoy as I have. I have no agenda, nor do I have any conflicts of interest. My children are raised. I have the time, desire, and means to be informed and engaged. I will return citizens' emails, phone calls, or come to citizens' homes or do whatever it takes to get the answers they need. I will be honest and forthright, using old-fashioned conservative common sense, respect, and accountability. My experience on the council, as well as attending a legislative session at the Capitol with council members and Mayor Nelson, have been invaluable. I have the skills, experience, knowledge, and relationships to get things done and get things done right. I recognize the Chamber as a vital partner in continued development of Washington, and I look forward to working with them, utilizing the Washington County Economic Development and Small Business Development Centers and SCORE counselors to encourage and to help those businesses to succeed. I thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
To our mayoral candidates, 2 minutes each, starting with Mr. Martinson.
Well, we'll see what we can do to get that trend going for sitting. What Mr. MacArthur was trying to get going, Mr. Ivy started, so I'll stay seated. But the reason I'm running is I've been on Planning Commission for the last several years, and there's a common concern that comes before us as Planning Commissioners, whether it's a resident that comes, whether it's a developer that comes, whether it's a business owner that comes. And that common concern is they don't feel like they're listened to. So in an effort to give the voice back to the people that are electing those people that are to be in charge of them, I want to give that voice back to the people. I've been in sales since I was 12 years old. I'm not very old, but that's a lot of years that I've been in sales. And you can ask any one of the people that I've dealt with over the years how responsive I am. I respond within, well, the same day. That was what differentiated us when I owned my own business here in St. George, was I would call them back the same day, and they were just flabbergasted that somebody would respond the same day. So I want to give the voice back to the people, and I want to be that sounding board that they can talk to and that they can trust. And I want to be able to know that our citizens and our residents, the business owners and the developers, are being listened to, responded to, and know that they do have somebody that they can talk to.
Mr. Nielsen.
I'll stand, because it's out of respect for you folks. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here. These are some really, really good men, and I include Ben in that too. I really do. You know, Ben wants to do the right things in Washington City. Heavens, I appointed him to the Planning Commission, so I think he's got some good points. First week I was in as a mayor, I get this call from a guy in California. He goes, "Hey, we're looking to relocate to Colorado Springs, southern Utah, or Idaho Falls." And I said, "Why don't you fly up here and I'll show you why you want to open your business in southern Utah." So he flies up. He opened his business in Washington. He's got a handlebar manufacturing company. They lived in Southern Cal for 80 years in this business, and he moved. And the reason he moved up here is because he said, "I've never had a mayor ever call me and invite me to come do a business in their city." It's been my honor and my privilege to see that happen. Over 100 new businesses every year since I've been mayor have been in Washington City. Not all of them are walk-in businesses, okay? You go down Telegraph Street, you see what's going on in Telegraph Street. Next week, we're opening up a Dubs 2 in Washington, okay? So when I hear that we're not friendly and we don't hear that, I have to kind of take exception to that. Now, we all have codes and we all have responsibilities, because I don't want you living in a house that 5 years later there's cracks and seams, your sewer doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera. Cities have to have that. And you all know that. I'm preaching to the choir. But I think in my 20 years of experience in executive management, knowing budgets and how budgets work, that I want the opportunity to see some other things that are coming down, and I would appreciate the opportunity to do so.
All right, to the first of 3 questions. We will start with our city council candidates. Mr. Ivy will be first. The proposed freeway off-ramp is a hotly contested issue in Washington City. Do you favor a new off-ramp in the middle of your city? Why or why not?
What I favor is good transportation. What I favor is safety. What I favor is people traveling down I-15 being able to get where they need to go safely. What I favor is for our residents to be able to get around doing their daily chores and their hard work safely and economically. Do I favor an off-ramp? No. Is it going to end up being the final option? I don't know, but I know I'm going to work very hard, like I have done ever since I've been on the council, to find options that are viable. We don't know. That's why we're in the middle of an environmental study right now, to find out the answers to those questions. It's very important that we're in that study, because that allows us to have a say in it. If we're not in the study, then if there were an accident, the Federal Transportation Administration, UDOT, could come in and say, "Here's your off-ramp," with absolutely no say from the residents. We know, we understand the impact that it would make in our city, but we understand that it's not about who's right, it's about doing what's right. Thank you.
Mr. Nyssen, 1 minute.
I would like to echo most of what Councilman Ivy said, but I would be more of a definite no. It would really hurt the center of the old part of town and disrupt people's lives. And like one council person said, that they've never had a freeway come down through a residential area that they're aware of. And I agree completely. I think this would be a travesty, and they've got to be other solutions, belt loops and corridors, but to put a freeway exit down either 300 or Main Street would be total nonsense. Thank you.
Mr. Ward.
Yeah, this would be a terrible thing for our city. Unfortunately, I don't even think our city council representatives even understand. We're talking about this as a study. We are not dealing with a study. We are dealing with an EA assessment. Yes, it is technically a study. It is the last step before putting this on the build list for UDOT. We're not looking at all the options. Our city intentionally went out and decided to do this, and our city council didn't vote on it. That is unconscionable. And they let it happen. Sorry, get a little intense there. But I know people in that area. I know people who will never recover from this. This is what representation is. Be ahead of the game, know what is going on in your city, and stand up for it. And don't just say you're against it, do something.
To our mayoral candidates, Mr. Nielsen.
You know what really makes a city? You guys make the city, okay? I'm not in favor of anything that would destroy our city. I do because I'm not totally incompetent about business and what you have to have a business plan. You have to understand some things to do and you can pursue so that you can make an intelligent decision. Let's make an intelligent decision. I think we can do much more other things in Washington City right now than having an off-ramp, okay? What I find very interesting is these candidates may not know this, but the phone calls don't go to the candidates, they go to the mayor. The mayor is usually the public works director, the chief of police, the whatever, okay? We get the calls, and so we get the concerns. And I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that our people aren't represented, like potential Councilman Ward said. So we need to look at it. We need to make sure that it makes the right sense for our community.
Mr. Martinson.
I'll be a follower in this instance rather than a leader because it's the right thing to do right now. In regards to the off-ramp, we need to exhaust every single option that is out there. And there are several options out there. We've got a parkway, we've got a northern parkway that can come in from exit 13 to Green Springs Drive. We've got an option to remaneuver exit 10 to bring traffic off before that. We've got an opportunity to possibly work with UDOT and work with St. George to do something with a Mall Drive underpass to possibly, potentially, I may be speaking completely out of turn here, but I would like to look at the options for that, to make that into an interchange. That doesn't make the best business sense for Washington City, but it makes the best sense for the residents of Washington City rather than putting an interchange, which would be very advantageous for me because I live right next to the interchange on the other side of the freeway. So all options need to be exhausted before we do anything like that.
All right, moving on to the second question. What is your view of balancing the desires and rights of citizens and the need for development and growth in Washington City? Starting first with Mr. Nyssen. Of course. What is your view of balancing the desires and rights of citizens and the need for development and growth in Washington City?
I think this is a question that is kind of an ongoing question that we'll never be able to answer. There's a lot of people have different desires and different wants and needs, but the growth and the developers, they are there and they want to develop their land. And to balance it out, I think we need to look at zoning for sure and try to get the right zoning. And I know Washington has moved more into PUDs to help maybe soften the development to make it easier on the current residents. And but I do think that that's a question that probably can't be answered. Thank you.
Mr. Ward.
Yeah, everything that we do is a balance. Property rights of the builder, property rights of the people who are already there. The one thing that we need to do more and better is to engage in this plan. St. George, you said you had a great plan. Ours is confusing and contradictory. There's something in there for everybody if you want to be pacified, but it doesn't really lead us to where we want to go, and it's a major tool for our city to plan what we do. My passion for what I am talking about is worthless unless I can deliver and convince two other people about what I have to do. I can do that. I know I'm not opposed to grandstanding. I'm not opposed to staking myself to the ground to be a lightning rod if I'm right. But I can be changed, and I can be flexible, and I can work with people. But people need to have a voice in Washington City and not just be an afterthought.
1 minute, Mr. Ivy.
The question is individual liberties or collective welfare. This is a fundamental political question in America that's gone on for centuries. Individual liberty is the idea that the individual's life belongs to him and he has the inalienable right to live it as he chooses. Collective welfare is a sacrifice or a standard for some benefit of the many, a sacrifice of the few. In a democracy, one can't stand without the other. The key and the value is in knowing that balance point. When you talk about vaccinations for elementary students, is it right that a person doesn't have to vaccinate to take the risk of infecting the other children in school because of that? Where do rights stop and where does responsibility start? Other questions like those, property rights. Property rights is a key topic. We had a lot of property when I was a kid growing up. We had a farm. We sold that off because of a lot of pressure that came from the community. Also, laws and police, taxes, those are all issues that has to be balanced and it has to be done with common sense and accountability.
To our mayoral candidates, starting with Mr. Martinson, please.
So property rights are something that is very, very fundamental to the United States of America. It was a reason that the Founding Fathers came to the United States, is so they could have their property rights. And that is a very, very delicate balance. Having been on Planning Commission for several years, that is a balance that we have to play with every single week. We've got a meeting tonight that we're going to have to balance very delicately property rights of neighbors. And it only happens when people talk with each other. They have to talk it out, they have to work it out, and there is always a compromise that can be met on one side or the other.
Mr. Nielsen.
Well stated, Ben. Thank you. I agree. I agree that when we communicate with each other, better things happen. We don't instill fear as a manipulating part of our politics. We instill reasonableness. Let us reason together. Let's visit with each other. Didn't we used to do that? Didn't we used to sit on the front porch rather than the back porch? That's what we need to do, get back to stuff like that that would allow us to reason together. I can't fault somebody that their inheritance is going to go to their kids and it's 30 acres of land. You know, I wish I had that 30 acres of land. I don't. But I can't fault somebody that has that and wants an opportunity to make something of that piece of property. We have that all the time. St. George has it all the time. The whole county has it all the time. So it's a great balancing act. It's a question that is going to be debated a lot longer than we're all here. So.
To our third and final question, what do you view as the most important leadership role of a city councilor or mayor? We start with Mr. Ward.
I've never known a leader who didn't have an understanding of the problems. Because honestly, if you're not understanding your problem or you're not understanding a direction where you need to go, you're really not a leader, you're a stayer. We need to understand what our problems are. My goodness, we have so much that we need to protect and we need to be there for it. But leadership comes from understanding our problems and effectively and diligently digging in and fearlessly going to look at those issues and making them better. Our city should be a great place for our citizens, for our city people in our city to work. It should be a great place for citizens, and they should feel confident about their home value, about their neighborhood, and about their safety. Thank you.
Mr. Ivy.
I've had a great example from Mayor Nelson and the City Council as I've been on the council for the last 10 months. And undoubtedly, with no question, my greatest responsibility is to the citizens of Washington, because they get up and go to work every day. They work hard. They don't have time to study the issues like I do, like it's my responsibility to. It's my job to make sure that they are informed, that they have the answers. And I have some things in mind to help with that. Now, you know, Washington has growing pains. And whenever you have growing pains, there's things that may lag behind. And we have a great staff and great employees there to help to make sure that those things get caught up. But without any question, it's dealing with the citizens and their concerns to provide the needs or the answers to the questions that they have, because as I said, they don't have time to study it out. I also think that the citizens have a responsibility to be a part of the community and to be involved in it, to bring everyone to have the information that they need. Thank you.
1 minute, Mr. Nyson.
Again, I'd like to echo what Councilman Ivy said, but I'd also like to say that the complexities of city government, the staff, and of how the city works, the inner workings, is something that a leader has to know about. And the law, I think we can't forget the law. We have an attorney that is by our side at all our meetings, and that enters into a leader has to know what his bounds is, what he can and can't do, and even what he can say and can't say. So I think that's, and of course to our citizens, we have to be approachable and answer emails and try to solve their problems. And I think that a leader is definitely something that we should strive for. Thank you.
To our mayoral candidates, starting with Mr. Nielsen.
I was looking down, I see Lisa right here, Lisa Rutherford, and I'm on a board of directors of another part of our county. It's the Water Conservancy District. And I appreciated her when she came because she helps us to think. You know, is that option the right option, or is it the best option, or should we look for other options? I think what makes Washington City great, what makes St. George City great, what makes our county great, is we look at those options. And it's all about you folks. How many of you live in Washington? More than last time. Well, you guys better raise your hands. More than the last debate we had. But as they say in church, you know, the guy gets up and he goes, I'm just going to talk to the primary kids. The rest of you, if you want to listen, go ahead. Well, no, we all should listen. We all should understand what happens in our heart, because the first thing we need to do is take care of our families. And then we take care of our neighborhoods. And then we take care of our communities.
Mr. Martinson.
There are a lot of important things when it comes to leadership. And I think in city government, I think it's objectivity. You have to be objective to all of the issues that are at hand. You have to study all of the options out before you come to your conclusion. And then you have to hope that that conclusion is the best conclusion if you are staying completely objective. You also have to listen to the voice of the people. If the people are concerned about some things, you have to be objective. You have to continue to listen to them, their concerns, and see if they're valid, and validate those individuals so that they know that you are there to serve them and not your own interests.
We move to our closing statements, 1 minute each. We will start with our city council candidates and Mr. Ivy.
Last spring, when I was handing out ribbons at the Dogtown Half Marathon, there was a gentleman there waiting for his grandkids to come across the finish line. He was from Idaho. And he turned to me and he said, "Why Dogtown? Why Dogtown Marathon? That seems like such a rotten name for such a beautiful place." And I said, "Well, you have to understand what Washington is about. I said that name comes from a very special event that happened in Washington for a lot of years. And when I was a kid, yes, Washington had a lot of dogs running around. It was because people would bring them there and dump them off. Rather than kill them, they would bring them to Washington because they knew that the people there would take care of those dogs, love them, and take care of them. That is what makes Washington great. It's what is the people. I love being a city councilman because I love Washington. There's no question that I wouldn't do anything I could to be the very best councilman possible. I'll put in the time. I'll do what it takes. My heart is in Washington. Thank you.
1 minute, Mr. Nyson.
When I knew I was going to have to give this last minute, I looked at Washington's 5-year strategic plan, and I thought I couldn't do any better than that in explaining myself. And so I'll go over that real quickly. To be a model city, recognize it as an innovative, empowering, high-quality city with these values: integrity in all actions, decision, and work performed, dedication in our community and ethical code, efficiency in our operations, quality in all aspects of work, innovation in meeting the present and future needs of our city, pride in our work, and our dedication to public service. Washington City, even with a high growth rate, is striving to maintain the small town feel and quality of life we currently enjoy. If elected, I feel I can keep and achieve these goals for the future and would appreciate your support. Thank you.
And Mr. Ward.
If elected to the Washington City Council, I will change this council by asking deep and poignant questions that need to be asked. I will seek for other sources to find out what is right and confirm and not take anyone's word for it. I will raise the bar of cooperation within our community, and I will see us no longer striving to be an island, but to work with the other cities, with the other communities, with the other businesses that are there to improve our relationship with them. We don't need to be an island. And that is really all I have. Thank you.
1 minute for our mayoral candidates, starting with Mr. Martinson.
Washington City, I've been in Washington City for 13 and a half years now. There has been a lot of growth within Washington City, and there have been a lot of wonderful things happening in Washington City. There are a lot of wonderful things happening right now with Washington City, with the current mayor, current city council. And I would just like to just continue on with that greatness of Washington City, to be able to work closely with the neighboring cities, neighboring counties, and to be able to work closely with the residents, the developers, the business owners, to be able to let them know that Washington City is one big, loving, caring community that has several different sub-communities within it, but that we can all work together and we can all serve each other. And that's really all I have for that one.
Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you, and thank you. One of the things that I think has been tremendous for our city is the combining of St. George Chamber with the Washington City Chamber. That took a lot of years to get going. I'm proud of saying that perhaps we had a little hand in that. I'm grateful to have a partnership with St. George, Utah. For some reason, somebody thinks that we don't work well together. Well, that's an absolute false statement, and I'm here on the record to say that, and I've got people that will nod their head and say that it's not true. Okay, we have a wonderful city. We're more of a bedroom community. We are. I get that. We're probably not going to be the hub mecca of industry in Washington County. We don't desire to do that. We have some wonderful businesses that are trying every day to make it work, just like you do. You, every day, you try to make it work. You try to make it work with your personal life, with your wife, with your children, your children's children, your grandkids. That's what it's all about. And I would appreciate the opportunity to continue the train that's going in Washington, which is a good train and it's moving forward. Thank you.
Please, a round of applause for our Washington City candidates. reminder to all that early voting begins on October 24th. Locations and times can be found at vote.utah.gov. The general election, of course, Tuesday, November 7th. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you to Dixie State, to Henry Walton, everybody here for hosting us. Have a good afternoon.